Imagine standing inside a stadium holding 110,000 people. The roar is so loud you can feel it in your chest. Flags from dozens of nations wave in every direction. And somewhere on that pitch, the greatest footballers alive are fighting for the one trophy that means everything. Now imagine that happening across 3 countries, 16 cities, 104 matches. That is not a dream. That is FIFA World Cup 2026. And by the time this tournament is over, every record in football history will be broken. But here is the question nobody is really asking. Why? Why is this one different? Why will historians, journalists and fans look back at 2026 as the moment world football changed forever? That is exactly what we are going to find out today. Welcome back to the channel. If you are new here, this is the place where football gets explained properly. The history, the culture, the stories behind the game we all love. And today, we are talking about the FIFA World Cup 2026. Now, before you think this is just another hype video, let me be clear. We are going to look at the actual numbers, the actual history, the actual decisions FIFA made and why they matter. Because when you understand the full picture, you realize this is not just another World Cup. This is a completely different animal. So let us start from the very beginning. To understand why 2026 is so enormous, you need to understand what the World Cup actually is. It started back in 1930. Uruguay hosted the very first FIFA World Cup, and only 13 nations showed up. 13. The entire tournament lasted less than 3 weeks and the host nation won it. A beautiful, chaotic, pioneering moment in sporting history. For decades, the World Cup grew slowly. By 1950, it was 16 teams. By 1982, it expanded to 24. And then in 1998, FIFA made the move to 32 teams, the format that an entire generation of football fans grew up with. 32 teams. 8 groups. 64 matches. That was the template for nearly 30 years. France, 1998. Korea, Japan, 2002. Germany, 2006. South Africa, 2010. Brazil, 2014. Russia, 2006. Qatar, 2022. Every single one of those tournaments ran on the same basic structure. And every single one of them produced unforgettable moments. Zinedine Zidane, Ronaldo, Miroslav Klose, James Rodriguez, Kylian Mbappe. But in 2026, FIFA is tearing up that template completely. Here is the number that changes everything. 48. For the first time in World Cup history, 48 nations will compete. Not 32. 48. That means 16 more countries get to experience the World Cup. 16 more sets of supporters, 16 more national stories, 16 more chances for the unexpected. Think about what that actually means for the world. There are regions of football that have historically been underrepresented. Africa currently sends 5 teams to the World Cup. In 2026, they will send 9. 9 African nations competing on the biggest stage. That is a seismic shift. Asia goes from 4.5 spots to 8.5. CONCACAF, North and Central America and the Caribbean, jumps from 3.5 to 6. South America increases slightly too. Suddenly, nations that have never experienced a World Cup are walking onto that pitch. Smaller footballing cultures, emerging nations, communities that have dreamed of this moment for generations. And that is exactly the kind of expansion that makes football feel like it truly belongs to the entire world. Now the format is where things get genuinely interesting. With 48 teams, you cannot just run the old 32-team structure. So FIFA redesigned the entire competition from scratch. The group stage now features 16 groups of 3 teams each. 3 teams per group. Each team plays 2 matches. The top 2 from every group advance to the round of 32. Yes, you heard that correctly. A round of 32. And then it is a straight knockout from there all the way to the final. The total number of matches? 104. Compare that to the 64 matches at every World Cup since 1998. That is 40 additional games. 40 more nights of football. 40 more chances for drama, goals, upsets, and moments that will be replayed forever. Now some football fans have raised concerns about the groups of 3. With only 2 matches per team, there is a possibility of collusion in the final group game. 2 teams agreeing on a result that suits them both. FIFA is aware of this. Both final group games in each group will kick off simultaneously, just like in the current format. To reduce that risk, But the reality is simple. More matches means more football. And nobody who loves this game is going to complain about more football. Now here is another piece of history. For the very first time, the World Cup will be hosted by 3 nations simultaneously: the United States of America, Canada, Mexico. Let that sink in for a moment. 3 sovereign nations, spanning an entire continent, co-hosting the greatest sporting event on earth. Mexico, by the way, becomes the first country to host 3 World Cups. They were hosts in 1970 and 1986, and now 2026. No other nation in history has done that. The United States hosted in 1994 and drew enormous crowds. In fact, that tournament still holds records for average attendance. American stadiums are colossal. MetLife Stadium in New York, AT&T Stadium in Dallas, SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles. These are venues built for spectacle. And Canada joins as a World Cup host for the very first time, with matches in Toronto and Vancouver, 16 cities in total, spread across a continent, connecting cultures, languages, and footballing traditions that rarely share the same stage. This is logistically one of the most complex sporting events ever attempted, and that ambition alone makes it historic. Let us take a moment to talk about one stadium in particular, because the story of this ground captures everything magical about 2026, the Estadio Azteca in Mexico City. This stadium has witnessed more World Cup history than almost any other venue on Earth. In 1970, it hosted the final. Brazil beat Italy 4-1, and Pelé lifted the trophy right here in this ground. 16 years later, in 1986, Diego Maradona produced what many people consider the greatest individual World Cup performance of all time. Right here in this stadium, the quarter-final against England, the infamous Hand of God goal, and then 4 minutes later the goal of the century. Maradona collecting the ball inside his own half, dribbling past 5 English players and the goalkeeper, and slotting it home. The Azteca erupted. Now in 2026, this same stadium will host World Cup matches again. Players who grew up watching footage of those moments will walk out onto that pitch and feel the weight of everything that happened before them. That is what the World Cup does. It layers history upon history, story upon story, until the whole thing becomes something much larger than sport. No conversation about World Cup 2026 is complete without talking about the players, and 2 names stand above everything. Lionel Messi, Cristiano Ronaldo. These 2 men have defined football for nearly 2 decades. They have broken records that seemed unbreakable. They have won trophies, individual awards, and the loyalty of hundreds of millions of fans across the globe. Messi finally won his World Cup in Qatar 2022. That moment, him lifting the golden trophy, Argentina champions of the world, was one of the most emotional scenes in sporting history. Grown adults around the world wept openly. Messi had completed his story, but will he be in 2026? He has suggested he might be. He would be 38 years old, older than any outfield World Cup winner in history. And if he plays, every single match becomes a potential farewell to the greatest footballer who ever lived. Ronaldo is in a similar position. He has never won the World Cup with Portugal. That is the one trophy missing from his collection. And at 41 years old in 2026, this is almost certainly his last chance. His last dance on the biggest stage. Beyond those 2 legends, there is a generation of players ready to announce themselves to the world. Jude Bellingham of England, Pedri of Spain, Gavi, Vinicius Jr. of Brazil, Lamine Yamal, Florian Wirtz of Germany. These are the next icons of world football, and 2026 is where they could truly arrive. There is one more storyline that could make 2026 genuinely extraordinary: the United States national team. American football, or soccer as they call it, has grown at a remarkable rate. The MLS has expanded dramatically. American players now compete at the highest levels in Europe. And hosting the World Cup on home soil creates a kind of energy and expectation that is unlike anything else in sport. When a host nation performs well, the tournament takes on a completely different atmosphere. Think of South Korea in 2002, reaching the semi-finals on home soil, or France in 1998 winning the whole thing, or Argentina lifting the trophy in front of their own continent in 1978. The United States have a young, talented squad, and with 100,000 fans filling those enormous American stadiums, the atmosphere behind them will be unlike anything this generation of players has experienced. Could they go deep? Could they shock the world? That question alone is enough to make billions of people tune in. Let us take a moment for some numbers that will genuinely surprise. Qatar, the 2026 World Cup is expected to be watched by 5 billion people globally. 5 billion. That is more than half of every human being alive on Earth, watching the same tournament. The prize money on offer is the largest in World Cup history. FIFA has significantly increased the total pot. Reflecting the commercial scale of this expanded tournament, MetLife Stadium in New Jersey, which will host the final, has a capacity of over 82,000. And with temporary structures added for the World Cup, that number increases further. The final in this venue could be the most watched live sporting event in American history. Here is a fact that most people do not know. The 1994 World Cup, held in the United States, still holds the all-time record for total tournament attendance. Over 3.5 million fans attended matches across 9 venues. In 2026, with 16 venues and 104 matches, that record will almost certainly be shattered. And here is perhaps the most beautiful fact of all. 48 nations means 48 different stories, 48 different sets of players who worked their entire lives for this chance. Some of them come from countries where football infrastructure is still developing. Some of them are from nations that have never won a competitive international match. And now, for the first time, they stand on the same pitch as France and Brazil and Germany. That is what sport is supposed to be. People sometimes ask why the World Cup matters so much. Why do adults cry when their country scores? Why do cities stop moving when a big match kicks off? Why does a football tournament feel like something more than just a game? The answer is connection. The World Cup is the one sporting event that genuinely transcends borders, languages, and cultures. It is the moment when a boy in Lagos and a girl in Buenos Aires, and a grandfather in Tokyo, and a teenager in Manchester are all watching the same thing, feeling the same tension, experiencing the same joy or heartbreak, and 2026 will do that on a scale we have never seen before. More teams means more nations involved. More nations means more cultures represented. More cultures means more of humanity sharing the same moment. In a world that often feels divided and fractured, the World Cup is a reminder of what we all share. A love for a ball, a pitch, a goal, and the pure human drama of sport. FIFA World Cup 2026 is not just bigger in terms of numbers. It is bigger in terms of meaning, in terms of reach, in terms of what it represents for the global game. This is the moment football steps into a new era. So let us bring it all together. 48 nations, 3 host countries, 16 cities, 104 matches, the possible final appearances of Messi and Ronaldo, the emergence of the next generation of superstars, American stadiums filled to capacity, the Estadio Azteca writing another chapter in its legendary history, and 5 billion people watching it all unfold. FIFA World Cup 2026 is not just the biggest World Cup ever held. It is the biggest sporting event in human history, and we get to watch it. Whether your team is one of the 48 nations competing, or whether you are simply a fan of football in all its beautiful, chaotic, glorious forms, this tournament is for you. History is not going to happen around us in 2026. We are going to be right in the middle of it. If you learned something today, or if this video got you even a little bit excited about what is coming, do me a favor. Hit that like button. It genuinely helps this channel reach more football fans just like you. Subscribe if you want to be part of this journey. Because between now and the first whistle of World Cup 2026, we are going to break down everything. Every team, every player, every storyline worth knowing. Drop a comment below. Tell me which nation you are supporting. Tell me which match you are most excited for. I read every single one. This is going to be something special. And I will see you in the next video.